But we begin this hour in Ukraine, where Ukrainian forces are making major breakthroughs on the battlefield. Let's bring in NBC News correspondent Erin McLaughlin live in Kharkiv. Erin?
Hey there, Mika. A spokesperson for the Kremlin says that today it's likely that Russian President Vladimir Putin will sign into law the illegal annexation of 4 Ukrainian territories. This, as President Zelensky says, they continue to make gains on the battlefield. Ukrainian forces say they're now making stunning gains to the south, liberating 2 territories in the occupied Kherson region. Just days after a victory in the eastern town of Liman, hoisting the Ukrainian flag and tearing Russian signs down from areas where just days ago, Russian President Putin declared the Ukrainian territory would be Russia's forever. A long-awaited breakthrough in a bloody war that's potentially entering a new phase. While liberated areas have been left devastated by Russian occupation, including the village of Kamyanka. This man says a bomb blew a 30-foot hole in his backyard. How did you survive? I don't know, he says. Russian state TV now bluntly warning its viewers we should not be expecting good news, and airing this video of draftees training before heading to Ukraine. But around half of the soldiers conscripted in a region of the Far East now being sent home after being deemed unfit, according to a Russian official. The leader of Chechnya releasing this footage, claiming to show his teenage sons, including his 14-year-old, preparing for war. Days after the Putin ally called for Russia to use low-yield nuclear weapons on the battlefield. In a rare admission, Russia's defense ministry pointing to Ukraine's superior, that is the word they used, superior tank units to the south for the reason why Ukrainian forces have been able to break through Russian defenses down there. Mika?
Wow, what a shifting dynamic. NBC's Erin McLaughlin, thank you very much.
Let's bring right now the president, the founder of the Eurasia Group and G0 Media, Ian Bremmer. Ian, thanks so much for being with us. I'd love to get your reaction to the latest developments on the battlefield in Ukraine.
Yeah, these forces, in many cases, they're panicking. The Russian forces on the front lines, a lot of them are leaving their tanks. You know, they don't have transport. They're perfectly operational, and they're running away. They're stealing local Ukrainian cars to get out. They're leaving a lot of their colleagues behind. Of course, those that remain understand that they're being left, and the morale is abysmal. This is the reason why, without a plan at all, Putin decided to suddenly call up these 300,000 minimum troops in a mobilization, and they're trying, without any training and without adequate equipment, to get them to the front lines as quickly as possible to start defending some of this territory, because right now the Ukrainians are taking quite a bit back.
Well, and obviously with no training, we heard maybe 1 day training, no training for a lot of these troops. Their situation is going to almost, well, very likely end up worse than what we've seen over the past 6 to 9 months. I'm curious, look around the corner then. Let's say the Russian army continues its collapse. What's next?
Look, one of the reasons why the White House has been warning the Russian government and Putin directly about the use of weapons of mass destruction, particularly nuclear weapons, is because they understand that there are really no good military options left for Putin. He's becoming desperate, and in a position of desperation, that's something he would potentially consider. It's a last-ditch option, but it's something that's certainly plausible. In the nearer term, what we're seeing is that all of the remaining energy that the Russians are supplying into Europe is being cut off. You saw just over the weekend no more gas from Gazprom to Italy. You saw a week ago Nord Stream 1, Nord Stream 2 pipelines suddenly blown up. The belief on the part of NATO members, though there is no hard evidence of this yet, is that the Russians were behind that sabotage. There are still a couple of pipelines, one through Ukraine, one going to Turkey, that still provides some energy to Europe. The expectation is that those will be shut down in coming weeks. So this is only going to get harder economically for Europe. But again, so far, the Europeans, the Americans, the Canadians, all of the allies have held together incredibly tightly in response to Russian escalation. And despite the hardship coming this winter, no one believes credibly that that's about to change.
So we just went through some of the limited options that Putin has. Let's talk on the other side. Let's talk about where the Ukrainians are right now. Counteroffensive, seemingly by the hour, they're picking off new towns in the south. They're pressing their advantage. They are aware that a cold winter is coming, not just that's going to test their European allies, but also potentially freeze the battlefield in place. They're trying to get as much as they can right now. How far can or should the Ukrainians go?
It looks like Kherson, which is this town to the north of Crimea, and critically the one that provides all of the infrastructure, the water to Crimea, one of Putin's core demands that he's been making when he's talking privately to people, say, at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, Uzbekistan. What would it take to end the war? He's saying, no, we have to be able to provide that support, that supply line to Crimea. The Ukrainians are likely to take that. So, I mean, that's already been formally annexed by the Russians, even though they don't have full control of it. I've never seen an annexation of a territory that a country doesn't actually control before in history. But that means that Putin's going to have to go back to his own people and somehow express the fact that they have lost Russian territory. What are they going to do in response to that? Prepared to simply accept it as a loss? Are they going to continue to throw more and more Russian troops into a meat grinder? 300,000 can become 500,000, become 1 million. There's no limitation in the terms of the actual mobilization that he's drawn up. Or would he consider taking escalatory measures, including against NATO? The thing that worries me the most is if you watch Russian state media and watch the fact that they're admitting to the losses that they're now taking, which they've never done before. They're not fighting Ukraine. They're fighting these super Ukrainians because it's all NATO. They're fighting NATO. They're fighting NATO intelligence. They're fighting NATO troops. They're fighting NATO training. And so the potential that the Russians would be willing to start lashing out through cyber attacks, through potential drone strikes or missile strikes against even some of the military depots, say, in Poland, that becomes a much more real possibility. So over the coming months, I think we talk less about just
war over the last several months, that now even the remaining friends he has on the world stage, President Xi of China, Prime Minister Modi of India, have condemned him either explicitly and publicly or privately and implicitly when they speak in public. And yet he heard all that a couple of weeks ago and put his foot on the gas effectively. So does that mean he's not listening to anyone else, that he is a man alone right now?
He's close to a man alone right now. I mean, even Belarus, which is sort of the little brother of the Russians on the global stage, has declined to recognize the annexed territories that Putin has just enshrined into law. I wouldn't say the Chinese and the Indian leaders have condemned Putin, but they have said that this war is a disaster and they want it over. And in response to that, you're exactly right. Putin has stepped on the gas. He's basically said, no, I'm going to escalate. This has been the worst week, frankly, in terms of escalation of the war since it started on February 24th. And the most disturbing thing is that it comes on the back of the greatest direct pressure from the only remaining important friends that Putin has on the global stage: India, China, Turkey, Kazakhstan. And so, yes, we're finding that Putin is increasingly a country that is becoming a pariah on the global stage. Back in February 4th, you remember when he was talking with Xi Jinping, he was the most important partner of China on the global stage. In 7 short months, he's gone from that to becoming a global Iran, a rogue state that is a principal antagonist of pretty much everybody. And that's I've never seen that happen to a G20 economy in my life.